Hello and welcome to the Impact Zone podcast. We are back once more again to talk more TNA wrestling shenanigans. And I guess we're sort of talking about what happened with Joe Hendry in the Royal Rumble. If you didn't see it, breaking news, I know, sure. Joe Hendry was in the Royal Rumble. He was in at number 15. I think he was in there for like a few minutes or so. Don't really know much about it, honestly. I saw a little bit of it. I saw some highlights. That was about it. I know he got eliminated by Roman Reigns. It is kind of cool again, and it's one of those things. There was no TNA knockouts representing TNA in the Women's Rumble this year. Though you could count Jordynne Grace, though again her contract had already lapsed and she'd already signed a contract with WWE. So you could count her kind of ish. But like, yeah, I don't think I count it. But it's like one of those things. They weren't going to have somebody, or they didn't have somebody in the Women's Rumble, and I thought, well, that could make some amount of sense, because it's like if you overload kind of on that kind of thing of having too many people and too many things, it's like everything else gets kind of lost in the shuffle. Like if you're going to have Joe Hendry come along, I think it's way more valuable than having Masha come along or Spitfire come along or whoever else come along, whatever it is, just for a short appearance or whatever it is. Mostly here, I think we're going to talk about the relationship between WWE and TNA and what this kind of signifies to me and what I think it means and where I think we're going to be heading in the next at least couple of years. Unfortunately, I have not very good, well, not bad things to say, but not very good things to say, I guess, to say that at least I don't think we're going to see anything too major from the WWE TNA relationship, because we have to remember that this relationship is mainly with the WWE NXT product. So there is that gateway that NXT technically has sometimes with the main roster sort of shows. And that's where I think TNA will kind of be positioned. Sometimes it will get the NXT kind of treatment where it's not calling them up, but it's calling them up to the show to perform at some of these shows that some of the NXT people have appeared at before in the past. So there hasn't been very many times that NXT people have worked the main roster, apart from when they're actually on the main roster. So I feel like that is where we're going to look at seeing the TNA talent. I reckon that most of the time we're only really going to see somebody maybe appear at the Royal Rumble, maybe, and here or there, whatever, that's going to be it. That's my feeling. And now I could be totally, completely wrong. I think they had Braun Breaker appear like on Raw while he was in NXT or the NXT champion, but this is basically when they were about to call him up, and they said, oh, well, we want to try you out on whatever. I can't remember if it was Raw or SmackDown or whatever it was. But they decided, oh, yeah, we want to try you on the main roster and whatnot. And then they decided, oh, yeah, we're going to call you up as well. But we want you to finish your dates in NXT. So go back to NXT, drop the belt, and then we'll debut you properly on the main roster and whatnot. So maybe that kind of thing could happen where somebody from TNA, like maybe Joe Hendry, turns up on Raw or SmackDown for like an appearance or something, whatever it is. I don't know. I do feel like that's pretty unlikely, unfortunately. They didn't do that very much with the NXT talent. It's a very rare thing, and that's where I feel like TNA has kind of been situated. They've kind of been situated in being they're the other third brand that WWE, if there's somebody really hot or that somebody that they're kind of interested in, they might bring them on. But that's going to be like the limits, in my opinion. Yes, there'll be some workings with NXT or whatever else, but again, they're more treating it like a developmental territory in some ways, that rather than we're going to have all our best guys go up against all your best guys or whatever else it is. There's not, like, in my opinion, there's not going to be a pay-per-view that's cross-promoted with the two really on it. There might be some pay-per-views or some episodes here and there that, again, have crossover from TNA, crossover from an NXT, but that will be, and maybe, one here or there, like this was, a one here or there. I don't feel like this is going to lead to anything between Hendry and anyone on the main roster. I don't think anyone from... unless they're going to NXT or something like that, unless somebody's kind of being demoted down there in some way, it's it's very unlikely, in my opinion, that they're going to, bring somebody from the main roster. All of us, we've talked about this last year, probably, I think. Or was it nearly 2 years ago even? I don't know, remember now. But we were talking about when AJ was... Yeah, it was late last year, I think it was. When AJ was looking like he's going to retire or he's going to, whatever, that he should come to TNA to do one last big move, big hurrah, whatnot, that sort of thing. I think we also discussed the idea of, I don't know whether we did, but I thought of it there, and I was talking about it, I think, at some point, to say that WWE and TNA should, officially recognize each other's Hall of Fames. I know that sometimes they kind of recognize people that are in each other's Hall of Fames or whatever, but they should recognize each other's Hall of Fames effectively to say, both these Hall of... And again, same with the industry Hall of Fames and maybe even the WCW Hall of Fame. They maybe should, go, you know what, we're going to recognize all these people that were in the WCW Hall of Fame, or we're going to recognize all these people that are in the National Hall of Fame, at least in title. If you're not going to get anyone... maybe you're not going to get anyone coming from there who's alive very much, but we're going to recognize these names as being in our Hall of Fame as well. People from the past that have already kind of been inducted to a Hall of Fame, but now we're going to make them part of our Hall of Fame instead of we're just having to reintroduce them. Maybe you can, have just a ceremony of some sort just to reinduct them in the Hall of Fame, just to get, that little bit of speech out of somebody that might have some cool stories to tell. But that's the problem as well. It's these things take an inordinate amount of time, and only so many people can get, an amount of time to talk for more than 15 minutes. So it's you've got to keep it down, but you've got to be we want to hear some stories from this person or that person. So it's it's that balancing act that you've got to try to do, where it's we want some cool stories, but we don't want it to take 3 hours to get through one speech. And maybe that's something that they've got to do before somebody goes out or whatever. And I don't know whether they've done this in the past. I think they probably have started to do it now, where they've, or at least somewhat, have gone through the script that they're going to say and say, hey, look, this is some good stuff here and there and whatnot, but we need you to cut it down. We need you to cut some stuff here or there, because, you need to keep it to 15 minutes, or you need to keep it to this long, roughly at least. You're not going to fit all this in 15 minutes. So, yeah. It's one of those things that it's just that balancing act. But again, I do think that they should do that. Still, I think that they should recognize each other's Hall of Fames, and I think, again, WWE and TNA, I think they used to kind of do it, but again, it's sort of one of those things where it probably hasn't been relevant for a while, so I guess it hasn't really come up to say that this person or that person's in the WWE Hall of Fame, or this person or that person's in the WCW Hall of Fame, or this person, like, again, probably they couldn't even say WCW Hall of Fame because it was a WWE owned thing, and it was, or at least it was a WCW owned thing that WWE then owned. So it's like, or an NWA Hall of Fame, or whatever, the National Hall of Fame, or whatever it is, just the generic wrestling Hall of Fame. It's like, yeah, these are important things. These are like the people that, people think about when you think, about the history of wrestling. Ric Flair and Bruno Sammartino and Macho Man Randy Savage and all these guys, Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin and The Rock and all these guys. Like, I know the Rock and whatnot isn't in the Hall of Fame, but again, he's definitely going to be in the Hall of Fame one of these days. So again, just saying, he's going to have a Hall of Fame career, he'll definitely be in the Hall of Fame, WWE Hall of Fame one day, whatever, saying those sorts of things, like referencing each other's Hall of Fames, or saying, hey, this guy, Sting, who was in our Hall of Fame, he went into the WWE Hall of Fame. Oh, and Kurt Angle, he was in the TNA Hall of Fame, so he's a double Hall of Famer. I think he's actually a triple Hall of Fame, but I don't know, like, some of these people are, like, some of these people are in multiple Hall of Fame, so it's like, and that makes sense because they're, they deserve it in many ways. But again, so that's just a shorthand way of kind of like, yeah, they're in our Hall of Fame kind of as well. So we don't, like, we can induct them, but we don't really need to induct them. Like, and it's one of those problems, again, it's always like, well, WWE's the biggest, the baddest, the best, and whatnot. So it's like, again, that problem of, like, well, and there's like a few people that are in the WWE Hall of Fame that I know people don't agree with, and there's obviously people that aren't in the Hall of Fame that people go, why isn't this person in the Hall of Fame, or whatever else it is, and I understand why some of them aren't. Like, I 100% understand why Benoit isn't in the Hall of Fame or whatever, and that sort of thing. I can understand potentially why, like, China isn't in the Hall of Fame, but let it die, bro. Let the fact that she was in porn go. That controversy was years ago, and I know that she had some other controversies and whatnot, and drugs and whatnot, but Sean Waltman did more drugs than what she bloody well did, and he's in the Hall of Fame as part of DX. I know she's in the Hall of Fame as part of DX, but again, like, Waltman himself, I don't think he deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame. I think China deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame by herself. She did more things, and, like, she wasn't ever the best wrestler in the world ever, but she knew her role. She knew her role was to be the big, intimidating, whatever force of nature that wrecked people, and whatnot. She wasn't there to have, 10-star classic matches. She was there to, be a muscle machine that threw people around and whatnot. So yeah, but again, that's the thing. Like, she knew her role and she tried to perform it at the best as what she could, But still, like, and she was an attraction and she was popular, and that, like, at the end of the day, that's, what people want. Like, oh, especially back then, that's what they wanted, Like, and just to see a woman wrestler, and a woman wrestler that was treated like, as, like, on the same level as the guys, was, like, unthinkable and unheard of, especially back then when they just basically didn't even have a women's division. And it's like, they did a lot of, great things there, and, opened the door for a lot of people to sort of come in and to showcase themselves and to, really have a good career, like Trish and Lita, and a lot of other people, came just after, well, just as she was still there, but just as she was sort of leaving, really, they started to come along, And then you had people coming along that were after that, like Mickey James and, all these other people and whatnot. So it's, again, and then we don't want to go too far into it, but again, like, that is a good thing to do when you realize, oh yeah, this saves us some paperwork and saves us some time, because it is one of those things. Even if TNA only inducts one or two people every now and again, it's like, oh, okay, that's cool, or whatever it is. But it's like, when you've got 5 people being inducted or 10 people being inducted, even then you can't induct everyone. So it's like, yeah, and it does, like, to me, like, if you ask me, or even, like, I think most fans, if you ask somebody to say, does AJ Styles belong in the WWE Hall of Fame, they might say yes. But honestly, he belongs in the TNA Hall of Fame way more than he belongs in the WWE Hall of Fame. Like, way more. There's no question that he belongs in the TNA Hall of Fame. Like, but there is people who would say, he doesn't belong in the WWE Hall of Fame. What did he ever do? He only won like 3 titles or whatever, So he's, and like, again, like, maybe his TNA run wasn't much better in just holding 2 or 3 major world titles or whatever, but, everyone knows his legacy is a TNA legacy ultimately. Like, and if you don't realize that his legacy is ultimately a TNA legacy, then you're smoking crack. If you realize, oh yes, this guy, he came to WWE, after, he'd basically done everything, and then he did everything in WWE as well. But that was like to mostly wind down his career for the most part. This was one last sort of big time, big money sort of run for him, these last 5 or so years, whatever it's been. I don't even know now. But again, that's what it has been. It has been a run to, go, hey, I'm going to finish out on top, going to finish out in the WWE or whatever. And that's what Sting wanted to do. He wanted to go to WWE and say, right, well, I'm going to, make some big money and go out, with a legacy career and a legacy run, like, that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to put that, sort of nail in the coffin to an extent or to a degree, and he'd wanted to do that for a while, but he kind of felt like, the one thing I haven't done in my career, illustrious career, is go to WWE, and even if I'm just going for the Hall of Fame, hey, that's probably well worth my time to do, But they, in subsequent things, they was like, he was still pretty healthy and whatnot at the time, and he could still do some stuff, and not as good as what he had done, but again, he could still go a little bit, and I think he'd been training at the time, or had some time off and had time to train better and whatnot, do some DDP yoga or whatever it was. But again, like, that's again this thing, this guy who, was already in the TNA Hall of Fame at the time. But again, yeah, I want to be hopeful in many ways about the partnership with WWE and TNA, but from what we've seen thus far, like, there have been some highlight moments here and there, obviously. Not to say that there haven't been, but there's just, like, there's so limited left that I feel like that they can do in terms of anything with TNA, especially with their NXT brand. Like, I try to remember or try to think of anyone that's on that NXT roster that would be worthwhile bringing over to do things within TNA, and there's a very limited number of names, honestly, in my opinion. Like, there are people that are there, but, like, names that you could easily rattle off your head, like Obafemi or whatever, like, is he really going to come over to TNA? Probably not, because, it's like, well, what's the payoff for him? You know, then it's like, well, what's like, if you're going to take somebody like Joe Hendry over to NXT and he's going to defend the TNA title, it's like, okay, cool. Like, where's the story? What's the payoff? Like, sort of thing. It's like, you've got Cora Jade coming over to TNA. And I guess there's not much payoff there. It's like, she's going to have a match. She's probably going to lose. She's going to go back to NXT. And then she's going to continue on doing whatever she was doing before. Or she's going to move on to something. Maybe, possibly. That's the problem with the, like, right now with the TNA roster and the NXT roster. Like, in some ways. But the TNA roster is actually stacked full of people. They're both pretty thin. There's hardly anyone on either roster, honestly. There's only a handful of people that are on each roster, really. Like, or a handful or so of people. But the TNA roster is absolutely stacked. Everyone that's on that roster is, like, a main player, for the most part. Like, even if they're not world champion, they're still a main player. Ace Austin's a main player. You know, all these guys are main players. In some ways, it's a sad situation because, like, TNA can send, like we've said this, TNA has already been sending its top guys, mostly, over to NXT. What's NXT been sending us? Like, hardly anyone, like, really. But in some ways, that's not their fault. Like, because they've just got, like, hardly anyone. Like, really. So it's like, what are you going to do? But again, it kind of showcases that both brands are capable of so much more if they actually had, you know, a decent roster of people to kind of work with. NXT would be so much better with all of the TNA stars permanently implanted within that roster. Like, and TNA could take a lot of the younger NXT stars and actually make them into people or make them, like, into major players relatively quickly. Within, like, 6 months or so, they could make most of those people into major players. Even Cora Jade, I don't even know, like, how long she's been in NXT, and she's done, like, SFA, like, literal nothing. She's got a great character, she's got a great look, and whatnot. And she's certainly a good wrestler. As I recall, she was actually in TNA a few years ago and whatnot. But, like, she's been over there and really done not a lot of anything. She hasn't, like, had, like, from my knowledge, she hasn't had any amazing feuds. She hasn't had any, like, amazing moments. She hasn't, like, been in the Royal Rumble. She hasn't stood out. Like, she's good and she's great and she could stand out, but she just hasn't been given the ball. She hasn't been given the space, you know, to do those things, really. And it's like, this girl could do some stuff. Now, if you gave her 6 months, or whatever it was, worth of, like, build, or whatever, you know, then you would have something on your hands. You'd have a wrestler that's like, holy crap, we've got an, you know, potential, like, main eventer on our hands here in NXT, or at least women's main events, you know, like, we've got a great thing here on our hands. Like, all we need to do is invest. The problem is investing, and I think, like, that's one of those things, like, not just from the fans' perspective, but from the perspective of management. And you could say, oh, this person, they get too much TV time, or they get too much TV time, or whatever else it is. You know, and sometimes it is. It sometimes does feel like, oh, man, this person's getting a lot of TV time this week. But it's like, oh, well, they didn't get any TV time for, like, a long time. So it's like, well, fair enough. And understandable in some ways that they're actually, you know, now getting some TV time. You know, because now it's like, well, we've got to do something with these guys. You know, we've got to see what we're going to cook up for these guys and whatnot. So it is one of those things where it's like, what are you going to do with these guys? What are you going to do with these guys? What are you, like, every time it's like, what are you going to do with these guys? But that's the thing. could do anything you want with those guys. And it's interesting to see Wesley back in TNA. We didn't really talk too much about it, but it is a thing that sort of happened. And it seems to be building to 6-man tag, at least right now. So wait and see what happens there. And it's sort of like really revolves around the NXT tag titles. And that's the thing. Again, it's like everything is going to revolve around either the NXT tag titles, the women's tag titles, like the titles in general, the NXT titles, the TNA titles. That's what things are going to revolve around. You're not going to get, in my opinion, too many things like somebody coming over to challenge Tessa Blanchard. It's like, what would be the point there, or the reasoning there, or whatever there. Like, you've got to think that wouldn't like make much sense in some ways, as far as, a story. Like, if you had somebody that had past rivalries or whatever with Tessa, then you could start saying, oh yeah, well, okay, there might be something there. Like, you could say Drew and Punk, okay, that worked, so Tessa and Charlotte, for example, Tessa and Bayley, Tessa and, any of the, who else is over there that's from the Four Horsewomen? Sasha's gone. Who was the other one? Oh, Becky. Yeah, so any of those 3 matches, against any of the Four Horsewomen, effectively, it's like, yeah, that would make some amount of sense, but, or maybe somebody that was sort of like Chelsea Green or whoever else, like somebody like that, that's like, we know they've called them out online and whatnot and this sort of thing, but it's like, well, would they actually like work with them? So it's like trying to make sure that, this is going to go together and it's going to work, and we're not just here to, throw rocks or whatever, we're not here to slander each other. We're here to have a match. We're here to, work, and we're here to fucking make money. This is what it's about. This is a rivalry that we're trying to promote, that's trying to make money. We're not here to, call anyone out or whatever else or whatnot, this sort of thing, or to right the wrongs of the past or whatever else it is. This is to make money. That's what it's for. And like, if somebody says, I don't want to do the JOB to somebody like that, and that's the problem. Like, this becomes the problem. Like, it's like, we talked about, I think we talked about the dusty finish there with the tag titles, but I do feel like that's going to be the norm here, or somewhat the norm. It already kind of has been kind of the norm, from what we've kind of seen. Though Jordan was able to cleanly beat just about everyone that came from NXT. So that kind of throws a wrench a little bit into the plans there, I think, somewhat. But still, I feel like every other person, Joe Hendry, who else was there? I don't even know now. All these people that have come over, the Rascals. Actually, they did it twice, so it's like, yeah, it really feels like, there's not going to be like many clean finishes to a lot of these matches, because again, like, I think they're indecisive, like, well, not indecisive, but they don't really want, like, in some ways it's like, again, like, neither brand wants their guy to look worse than the other guy in some ways. Like, it's like, what if we put your guy over, that makes him look better than our guy? It's like, yeah, but he's better than your guy. It's like, at some point, Joe Hendry is a bigger star than Obafemi, like, or whoever else is on that roster, pretty much. It's like, so you've got to put Joe over, and like, maybe some of the more lower card people will do that. But it's like, a lot of the middle upper card people or even higher card people might be like, oh man, I don't want to put this person, over, or the management might be saying, hey, we don't want to put this person over this person because, we're WWE, we're the big brand, and whatnot. Yeah, but you're putting us on the level of your third brand, or TNA rather, but you know what I mean? Like, again, you're trying to put us on the level of your third brand. And a lot of people that are here are worthy of being in the main events of, like, Jordan Grace or, I don't know, but, like, again, like Josh Alexander, Joe Hendry, all these people are worthy or potentially worthy of being main events or main eventers in WWE's main roster. And if, like, we know that Joe Hendry's probably potentially going there, he probably will be, like, over there and doing stuff. He'll be at least on the same level of LA Knight and people like that. To start with, it's like, yeah, he'll definitely be on that level, and then he'll be probably moving on and up as well. Like, because he is a big star, because he is, like, a draw, So it's like, well, people like this guy, and we've got to build him up. We've got to build him up quick, So what are you gonna do? But yeah, I do keep wanting to cross my fingers and toes and legs and whatever else body parts that I can to hope that I'm not right with it. But I think, like we know that it's a multi-year, so it's like at least 2 years. But to me, like, it's like the best part of the agreement, in my opinion, will be this next upcoming year, or this up to 2026, effectively, whatever. So whenever Joe Hendry leaves, I feel like that will be, like, back to where we were maybe before, where it's like, again, whatever, we, like, unless you've got somebody really that we really like or we really want or whatever else, it's like, yeah, we're not that interested in working with you. You don't have anything for us. And though we've got things for you and we can help you out or whatever else it is, we don't really care. And yeah, we're just in it for our own, like, benefits or whatever else it is. Thing is, again, it's just one of those things where it's like WWE is always already, and probably always is a sort of half saying there, going to be and is the biggest promotion in the world. And they're always going to be there doing that. Like, there's no way in the world that ship is going to go down very, very quickly or very easily. It's just not going to happen. And if it did, then it will be pretty much the wrestling industry just dead and buried, because, like, people eat, like, again, they don't even know what professional wrestling is. Like, the generic people don't know what professional wrestling is. They just call it WWE because WWE is so ingrained in everyone's mind about what this thing is, that's what they think it is. They think Stone Cold, they think The Rock, and they think Hulk Hogan and that sort of thing. TNA is barely on the radar for, like, 80% of people in even knowing that it even exists, so it's like, again, you still have those people that are, were at the Royal Rumble and saw Joe Hendry for the first time and went, who the heck is this guy, and why is everyone chanting, who's this guy? I've never seen this guy before in my life, and whatnot. So it's, again, one of those things that it is a good thing, and this is a big thing. Like, again, but, we've got to look at it from, like, past behavior sort of dictates or predicts future behavior. That's one of those things that, is very, very true. If you go out there and you see that, hey, well, they have sent us not very much, and we have sent them the best that we've got, and they've continued to not give us, very much to work with, so that's going to be the partnership. We can see now that this is what the partnership's going to be. It's going to be they're sending us whoever they've got that they're not really using, that they don't really know what to do with, or don't really have plans for, or might have plans for, but they just don't have the time to give them enough momentum and enough wins or enough legitimacy to make them seem like, oh yeah, this person's on the up and up and whatnot. It's just that thing for people to, either look good, get like some recognition from somewhere else, or get that little extra bit of training or whatever else it is. And again, it starts becoming like, well, who on the NXT brand, if there are any, really, really, really wants to go to TNA? Like, or, I'm sure some people, if somebody says, hey, you're going to TNA to do this, they'll go, oh, okay, I'm getting paid for this, right? And they'll go, based on that, based on, Sean or Hunter or whoever else is agenting or whatever else it is, saying, hey, you've got to go to TNA and do this thing. Same with the TNA people. They've got the same sort of thing. Like, I'm sure that, like, Eddie Edwards or a few other people, like, are going, nah, I ain't going to NXT for shit. Like, Moose said that before as well. He said, I ain't going to NXT. If they want me in WWE, they got to bring me to the main roster, because I ain't going to NXT, which is fair enough in many ways. Again, that I agree with that, and I agree with the idea that, again, potentially, yes, you could do more down the track, but again, that's not what we've seen. And until we start seeing that, okay, we're not just going to make it, a once here or once there or whatever else it is, or a surprise here in the Rumble, like we do for, our guys in NXT who are down there and doing stuff. It's like, yeah, but we are going to bring you in. We are going to do, some significant things with you for a significant period of time. And then it's like, well, if you're going to bring somebody in from TNA to the main roster for a significant period of time, then it's like, well, then TNA doesn't have them unless they're going to work both shows somehow. And I guess they could do that with tapings and whatnot and that sort of thing. But again, it's like, I do feel like that's probably not that feasible, honestly. I don't feel it's that feasible for people to hop back and forth. Like with the live shows, like if they keep getting them live shows, like the live episodes, that could help with that. But again, it does feel like, or just like more regular tapings. Like, even if it was on a Saturday, even if it's not on a Thursday night, even if it was just like on a Saturday night or whatever else it is, whatever night that it is, that they just decide, okay, we're going to bring tapings this night and that night to this place. Okay, cool. Like if it was like the week before or whatever it is, like next week we've got a taped episode that was like a couple of weeks ago, whatever it was. Now we're taping another episode this week, but that's going to air in another 2 weeks, whatever it is, or another week, effectively. So, even if you do one, like again, you could do that. You could do one taping per week, or 2 tapings per week, or something, and say, okay, whatever it is. And then say, okay, well, let's go from there and go to having, just live episodes. Like, again, like if you start saying, let's just tape it, or let's tape every week, or let's tape every other week, every fortnight, then let's, just, record live, live to tape, baby, why not? That's what professional wrestling is. And that's how, you get better at professional wrestling, is these live things. You've got to remember, this is like same with pay-per-views. the more you have to put yourself under that pressure of this is live, pal, and it's being seen by not just whoever's in the arena tonight, but it's being seen by hundreds of thousands of people. And actually, we didn't really talk about this, but on that first live episode of TNA, there was a big botch in the main event, or a fairly big botch in the main event. But it's live, pal. What are you going to do? Shit happens, So, the timing was off or whatever it was or whatnot, and it did look bad, but it's like, well, that's what happened. But that's the thing that you need to drill out of people, kind of thing. You need to realize this is what's going on. This is where we're going. This is what's happening. This, this. And, you need to execute this, and you need to hit your times, and you need to hit, make it look good. If you fuck up, you need to make it look good, or you need to make it look like, hey, I was trying to actually headbutt him in the nuts or something. Whatever it was. I don't know. Don't just, it's tough to not be like, oh, well, this is what we had planned, or whatever it was, and now it isn't going to work because now this has been stuffed up. But it's like, well, just change it a little bit. Maybe it changes things a little bit, but it's like, at least you're getting to that point where you were kind of going. And, now you're getting to the next point. After that, whatever's next, what's next? Well, you knew what was next, except now you've just changed things just slightly. So, yeah, it should still be all right. Honestly, people fret or complain or whatever too much about botches. And that's why I didn't really bring it up, because it's like, yeah, it happens. Bro, it happens. Shit happens. And that's the thing, again, that necessary reaction of saying, oh, that's a botch, or unnecessary, or whatever. Yes, of course it's a fucking botch. What do you fucking think it is? Jesus. But it's more, to me, it's always more about, how do they recover from it, or how do they make up for it, in a sense, rather than going, oh, botch, you botched, you fucked up for 10 minutes or for 20 minutes or whatever, I don't know. But again, that sort of thing for any sustained period of time, it's get over it, dude, move on. The performers are trying to move on and trying to do stuff, so get over the fact that they botched, But anyway, still, I almost felt like the whole reason Matt Cardona was kind of coming back to TNA and doing stuff there was to go back to WWE and do something. But maybe he still is. I don't know. It really feels like he might have felt like, hey, if I go back in the Rumble, people are going to pop and going to cheer. And what I want is not for people to cheer. I want people to boo. Whatever. I don't know, dude. I don't know. And depends what you want to do with him at WrestleMania or whatever. It depends if you want to do something with him. I would. I'd bring him in to say, okay, you and Cena, let's go. Let's do something, there's few people there that you could think, oh, yeah, he could have a story with them or whatever else it is. He's not really a TNA wrestler. He's just in TNA right now, kind of, ish. So it's yeah. You could make that thought to say, oh, yeah, let's do something or whatever it is. But it's is that, worth it? where's that going? You know, like all these little things. It's like, does that work? Does that make sense? So on and so forth. But again, that's the same thing with anyone and everyone that's on either roster. It's like, again, that's the reason why, again, I do feel like it like more major things, even on the NXT roster, or even on the main roster potentially, like, there's no real chance for them to happen. Like, maybe you'll get somebody coming down that's, again, from, you know, Raw or SmackDown or something that's not really doing anything right now, and that'll be about it. Or, like, again, I just don't see them bringing somebody like Joe Hendry to Raw or to anything on WWE. Like, they could, but it's like, what's the point? You know? So, I don't know. And I guess it's like them sort of dangling that carrot in front of Joe Hendry as well, like saying, hey, by the way, you know, we're probably not going to give you a match with Cena, we're not going to probably do much with you, you know, type thing, if you're not under contract with us, you know, type thing, to try to dangle that carrot to say, hey, sign with us, we'll give you that match with John Cena, you know, like that sort of thing. Like, that will be one of the upsides, you know, whatever it is, you know. Unfortunately, this sort of thing will probably work as well, because, you know, that's where things are at. But again, that's just one of those things of saying, well, WWE will get what it wants one way or the other in many ways, you know, but TNA, what will TNA get? You know, maybe they'll get some viewers here and there and some, you know, some pay-per-view or, you know, tickets sold or whatever, some promotion maybe, but that promotion and ticket sales and pay-per-view buys, we can't discount it, but it is one of those things that just feels like there is no grander plan. There is no like potential in this relationship for it to be bigger than what it already has been in many ways. Like, it can bring in more money and it can bring in more interest in both promotions in some ways, but again, it's just very much like, well, it's not going anywhere. John Cena isn't appearing in TNA, you know, or Joe Hendry isn't appearing on Raw or at WrestleMania or whatever else it is to fight John Cena or whatever, at least while he's under TNA contract, you know. So I feel like, again, the partnership will be very not just uneven, but the partnership won't really do anything of like true significance to really like innovate or to, you know, break the walls or to do any of these things. It's not going to, you know, really do anything to, you know, go into, you know, all these things with TNA. Like, and then again, like, I feel like this year and like last year probably are going to be the best years of the agreement. Like, once they get Joe Hendry and maybe anyone else that they're kind of like eyeing up who has a deal coming up soon, they're going to be like, okay, well, now we can just put in minimal effort with TNA and yeah, whatever. Like, because they're already putting in like very minimal effort. But still, like, you know, like they can put in even less effort and be like, okay, well, now we've got what we want out of that. Well, we'll hold on, maybe, like, and if they bring up somebody else that, you know, we think can be on our roster, maybe we'll, you know, work with them a bit, you know, whatever, here or there. You know, it's not really to help TNA. Like, that's like the way that I feel like it is, just like, yeah, we're kind of doing you a favor, kind of, like, because we're going to take your main talent that you've got. We're going to take them anyway, but hey, we've done that so many friggin' times that we might as well, you know, give you something for it, you know. some sort of payback for it, and whatnot. So again, I said we would love to see AJ Styles. I think he could turn up for the Hall of Fame. Maybe that would probably be it. I doubt that they're going to let him come to TNA to wrestle. That's one of those things. I doubt that they're going to let it happen now. Cross my fingers, hope I'm wrong, but yeah, I just don't see it happening. I see them being whatever, very much so. Because again, they've got to focus, their focus is, so much on their own roster and what they're trying to do and their own promotion and everything that they just, and they don't even, again, we talk about people, not everyone can be, the top star or whatever else it is. Not everyone can be special or whatever else it is. But even so, it's they're just really just concerned with, their guys, and again, they can't even use all of their guys, at the top level, all the time, and that's just not feasible for any company. But again, LA Knight should be in that main event. He shouldn't just be in the, IC title picture. Nakamura, maybe because he's retiring or looking to retire soon, I would understand that he's, sort of stepping down a little bit, but it's still he could be in that main event picture, or at least semi-main event picture. You could put him there and sort of start saying, okay, same with Braun Baker or whoever else is kind of up there, is starting to say, oh, these guys are on the cusp of breaking out or whatever else it is, and they're always just that little bit short or whatever else it is, until you figure out how to really market them, or how to really get, or whose marketing is coming up and who's whatever, because that's what it's based on. It's all just based on the work that is put in and the sales. That's it. They are always, at the end of the day, and I disagree with this philosophy that John sort of said, Cena. It's best for business that he be in the main event. Probably is best for business because he's a main event player. He's a big draw. So it's that makes sense, despite how much I disagree with it, and despite how much I feel man, that's kind of a statement one's Hulk Hogan would make. It's that doesn't work for me, brother, type thing, almost I'm the main event and always will be. Yeah, in some ways, but no, not always, and not for a long time. And this is not a major WrestleMania, it's just WrestleMania 41. It's not like WrestleMania 40 or WrestleMania 50 or whatever. It's but it is time for John to kind of step aside, like I say, and it's tough to sort of find somebody that you could say, let's put him in there with this person or that person, to help put this person over. It's it's a thin number of people that would benefit from it, or could earn it, or would be received well enough to take it, sort of thing. So it's and the same with Roman Reigns. It's it seems like he's on the outs, or sort of on the outs, with going into Hollywood and whatnot. So it's well, same sort of thing. We've got to start looking at you, and probably Seth too, even though that he's not doing movies and whatnot that much, or he is somewhat, but not as much. You're an older talent. Kevin Owens, older talent. Time to start, let's just start putting you with a whole bunch of young guys to help them get over. It's a difficult set of circumstances. You can't just, even though they didn't get that much in that main event that he probably should have done. Same with a lot of people that were there. It's they didn't know what to do with them, but there's no point in continuing to not know what to do with the younger stars that you've got, just to make an excuse to say, oh, well, we'll keep making the same mistakes and not knowing what to do with these young guys, and then 10 years after they're past their prime or whatever, we'll finally start doing something with them. It's a vicious cycle that you're going to just keep repeating. It's like, no, you've got to do something with these young guys now, so that they're in their prime or hitting their prime, and whatnot, when you're pushing them to the top, And then once they're sort of coming on that downward swing, you've got to give them more stuff to do to give back, to give, somebody else that chance. And that's where KO and a lot of these other people, Sammy, whatnot, are. They're in that position of saying, yeah, you're in that position now. Like, you're the old guard, unfortunately, even if you didn't get that great of a time at the top, and you probably deserved better, But we'll give you some major things to sink your teeth into in the last few years that you've got. So, but yeah. I don't think any of that, like, we talked about Natalya potentially coming over to TNA to wrestle Jordan. Like, okay, that's not going to happen. She might wrestle Jordan in WWE now. Who knows? Maybe. But, like, thinking to see somebody like that come over to, or anyone to come over from WWE, more on that. Like, I don't think Natty's on the main roster side. She's more in NXT now, but like, she's more of a trainer and whatnot. But still, it's like, you just wouldn't expect to see it, because it's like, again, they could change the game by saying, you know what, we're gonna shatter everyone's expectations of this partnership and go whole hog, or go deeper and whatnot. And it's crazy, like, their relationship with New Japan or whatever else it is, or Noah, has netted way more in terms of people from the main roster going over there to do stuff. It's like ridiculous. So I don't know. And like, I don't know, I think they had a relationship with Triple A as well, but not too sure. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts that on this that say this isn't good, as far as like, or it's not going to be really like amazing. It could like net some stuff here and there, but like, honestly, it's not going to like do a whole lot. Do you agree? Do you disagree? How do you feel? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and hope you'll join me again in another one.